Hello, everybody. Welcome to this live stream with Instruo, as the thumbnail there suggests, for new modules, general hangout, studio tour, interview, live Q&A, and any other kind of good stuff that we want to put to Jason. How's it going? Welcome to this.
Yeah, good. Sorry, my YouTube on the app has just jumped to an advert midstream, so I've lost all the comments.
We're running our own into
Perfect
adverts within the adverts within the. We'll have Google AdSense onto us. We're selling our own stuff on stream. Jason, for those that don't know, Mr. Instruo, as it were. Although you do have quite a team around you, don't you? How many work up at Instruo now? How big's the team?
Oh, at this point, I think there's 7 of us full time, and then a handful of freelancers. So I think it's up to a maximum of like 14.
Oh, nice.
Which is mad.
Yeah. That's full on. I will say up front, we're both watching the live chat, so keep questions coming. If they're relevant to whatever we're talking about, I'll just throw them in. If they're not, I'll copy them out into a document, and we'll keep having kind of Q&A breaks. So right from the off, if you want to fire any questions at Jason or myself, please do in the live chat. And but you've just main reason to hang out, really. Well, selfishly, I want the studio tour because it looks very different to when I was up there and it was more of a construction site and you were working in a different space. But also just to hang out and share ideas around the new modules as well. For those that missed it, Lion and Tain released the dual switch. Yep. Leon the Lion had good fun with the... Not many people caught the Leon film graphic with the div kid faces over the girl. And...
It was quick. I missed it first time watching the video. I had to go back and was like, oh, did the image make it in? It did. So.
Yeah, did he let the stupidity slip? I think more people caught the div lion, or however you want to say it, than they did the Leon film scenes. Hopefully, maybe get a copyright strike on that. I think there is some kind of visual tracking of YouTube content as well as audio. Anyway. Hello everyone in the chat. I can see some familiar faces, some Patreon supporters. That's great. If anyone wants to support this stream, Super Chat is open in the live chat, but a better way to support would be to join the growing community over on Patreon. I'll put a link in the chat shortly. That gains access to Discord, which is where I host the kind of community, lots of chat channels, lots of people in the chat from the Discord as well, which is great. So maybe we start with Leon. Patching switch matrix. Where did this kind of come about? The idea of inserts is a really familiar thing, maybe to people that have worked with patch bays and studios and inserts on channel strips. But where did it come from?
From my perspective, it came from Imo, who's one of the full timers here. So he's been playing about with a few different matrix mixer type ideas. I'm not sure if the Leon came first. He's laid out a board that's like a bigger, sort of matrix mixer type thing, but it's little drop onto connection points for mixing it. So I think the Leon maybe came like a bit before that, but I kind of let him do his thing, and then once it was conceptually down, we started working on the PCB layout and built the prototype, and then came up with the name. I think Leon translates to matrix or net it'll be. I think it's like sort of like a fishing net type translation from some derivation of Gaelic, either Scottish Gaelic or Gaelic.
There was something an open mesh network, was it? I think it said on the website. Something along those lines. I like the idea of magnets being used. Does that cause any odd interference with anything though?
I don't think so. Like, I think it's literally just little. They look like pawns. They look like little chess pieces that just connect to this bigger board. I mean, it's like a desktop little standalone thing that he's working on. It's really cool. But yeah, the Leon we condensed down to actually fitting as a module.
The page is up for anyone that wants to see. Yeah, I like the idea of it being an open interpretation of the Gaelic, an open meshed form, twisted, knotted, or woven together at regular intervals. Nice. I like Leon as well. It's one of those. We have these conversations between us, catching up work-wise and sharing ideas and things, and it's always how are you going to say that one? How are you going to say that? How's this pronounced?
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the names that we probably get wrong because a lot of them are Scottish Gaelic words, which Google Translate. None of us speak Gaelic here, so I'll leave all the little dictionary definitions, which are, some of them come from like direct pulls from translations and then definitions, but a lot of them it's there's a lot of creative license. We're going for something that has a loose framework reference to what the module is and does. It's very much a little aesthetic quirk with the dictionary definitions and all the manual stuff like that.
Yeah, well, it should be. That's part of the. I kind of look forward to that. There was an exciting point for me with Oct was, what are they going to write about Oct? 'Cause I think the conversation when I was up there last summer, a year ago for Oct, I think it was.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit for a year ago. We couldn't fit the little div kid head and the Instruo logo top and bottom and a title, and you just went, just give me the title kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I looked forward to that kind of moment, as it were. I was interested with Leon though, for Amo and yourself, how's this fitting into your systems? Because it's such an open concept, and modular's a patchable environment as it is, unlike maybe pulling a desk out and a load of 19-inch rack gear where a patch bay makes absolute perfect sense. How's this fitting in for you? Certainly as an artist yourself and someone that's performed and composes with modular, how do you find this kind of fitting in workflow wise?
I think the first time I properly patched with it was a lot of prep for the recent TSL video that I did. So that's the first time I actually set up a system, because each time there's like a module demo or something, I'll set up a system. So okay, I'm just going to leave this as is. Never happens. It always ends up getting something torn out of it, because it's like, I need that over there for testing this. So it's rare that I actually have a system together for any extended length of time at the moment. But yeah, so like it was really good fun to get to know it in more of a context, prepping for that video. But there isn't really. This is the first full mixer that's in the Instruo range, I guess. I mean, the Vinca can act as a mixer if you've got multiple of them, then you chain them in the back, and then you've got 2 channels of mixable audio per Vinca. But it's matrix mixers are fun. So, and they've been done so many other ways, and it's just a quirky take on it, I think. Because the prototype IMO had made up a bunch of just stereo 3.5mm ends, just with the tip and ring shorted together, and I think it was like a lot from AliExpress or something. So they were really like crudely made and didn't they jam in the jacks quite frequently. So they were just not quite the right shape and size. But it was proof of concept. So like getting the actual pins made up, that was a process. Like trying to explain that I just need a little loop of cable, and it's just the tip and ring. Ground, just leave. There is no ground. There's nothing on the other end of the cable. So so I think it was a couple of rounds of samples coming through until we got it settled on.
How are you finding it as a mixer then? As you say, it's the first kind of more fleshed out mixer. I'll pull an image up from the Vinca, because it's actually a jack socket. It's not a ribbon cable expander. You can literally jack socket behind the panel and chain all these VCAs together. What that's been good for me is going end of the row in the bigger case to just drop Vincas in, and kind of like I can drop mix down between my rows with VCAs or ring mods, because there's the bipolar VCA on top as well.
Yep.
So that's been fun. But for Leon, how are you finding it as a mixer? Because the first thing everybody says, I think, with Leon and patch matrices like that is, I want a standard matrix mixer with level controls. You've got the weighted mixing. Are you finding that's enough on Leon?
From a lot of the patches that I've done myself, it's been that works. If I'm just mixing it down to a single output, I mean, it really comes into its own as a matrix mixer if you're using multiple outs, and then you're able to pin multiple sources to the same destination. But there's no pots on it, so adjusting the levels dynamically on the mix level per output is a bit more limited, it being just a pin matrix. But if you're mixing from just the very last output, you've got six inputs down the left, and if you pin them depending on how far you are from left to right, that'll determine some amplitude because of the cascading attenuation per step. So you can get a good amount of mixing. Like I found that with the video examples when I'm mixing different waveforms together, or doing the like the additive synth example where I'm mixing in the different overtones. Like it's a good range of amplitudes across the 6 different levels.
Just unmute myself. Good point, just to get the initial kind of round of questions in. I was just scrolling back through the chat and copying them across into a document. Cool. We've got Signal Sounds, Alex or Jason or Kyle, whoever's on the Signal Sounds YouTube account. Oh, yeah. Hello, whoever it is. If it's Alex, I hope Baby Signal Sounds is well and enjoying this stream as they did the Future Sound System stream before. But yeah, let's just jump straight into some of these questions before they mount up too much. Couple from Stu J. Hey Stu, question for you, Jason. What's your primary idea source, as in your source of ideas for modules? Is it customer feedback? Is it personal wish list? Is there a primary influence?
Good question. It's probably just what I feel like I'm missing in my system, or something that I've seen that's like, oh, that's interesting. Like I've got a few things on the hit list at the moment, like that will be future oscillators or filters or all sorts. So there's kind of variations on stuff that I've already made, and then a string of other things, as well as with the growing team, there's now more collaboration and more brainstorming just ongoing. So there's the backlog of modules in development is getting quite extensive. So we've got our hands full for the foreseeable. I think at one point we had whiteboard scribbles up. I think you might have seen it last year when you were up. There was there may be up to, is it like 10 to 15 different,
and each one of them was
listed up.
That trip I made up last year we're talking about. I basically kind of sent over ideas for Oct, some notes, some bits of testing, went up there, really fleshed it out. Jason then dealt with actually designing and doing the thing, but we were fine-tuning the rates with you soldering caps on and off, if I remember correctly. But I do remember that board when we were there, and each one of them could have been its own morning conversation. Oh, that'd be cool if, I've been thinking about that. And then it might be, maybe Sebastian turned around and said, I think that'd be really cool implemented that way. And just Kian would then say something else, and you think, God, you must lose so much time to just discussing this whiteboard. But the last conversation on the phone we had for upcoming modules, just randomly sharing ideas and things that are coming, and we were talking about
there are a few you reminded me of in that conversation.
We were discussing kind of Lion and Tine being released, but I was like, and you told me about this idea, and you're like, I've done that now, and I've maybe laid that out, or thinking of a panel design, or it was hours just trying to quickly rattle through. I was like, and you mentioned this. And we talked for 10 minutes. And you said this. Is this still happening? You've implemented that this way, and I've got this idea for this. Yeah, there's no shortage to answer Stu's question. And I think the idea of feedback, certainly now it's a team. I can imagine that's kind of never ending. Stu also asked, what's your musical background?
So originally, it was classical violin, which I took up when I was 9 or 10. So classical violin and classical piano, which I studied for several years. I mean, violin sort of extended on further. Like my piano chops have dropped off very quickly. But so classical originally, and then picked up guitar and drum set and played in bands all throughout high school. And then both, I've got 2 undergraduate degrees, both in music. So I studied at Perth College here in Scotland, and then did a degree in Berklee College of Music in Boston. And that's where I sort of really fell down the rabbit hole of synthesis, getting into electronic production design major. And then, that I found the topics that I wanted to study, and really just kept going from there. I was like, I could actually build this, and then just keep learning, ongoing from that. So,
okay, I'll keep rattling through questions. They're all fairly varied. Resonant Space asked, "What are the expansion headers on the back of Leon meant for?"
Good question. An expander, maybe
potential future ideas.
There are a few modules. I try not to. yeah, at the latter layout stages, I'll always do a final pass. It's like, okay, what aspects of the circuit make sense to sort of break out for access? Like, just so I don't paint myself in a corner. Because if, I might have an idea for some way to tie a couple of modules together, or add an expander, or add another module that can, link in with something else. And, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot by, realizing, oh, it would be nice if I just had pins broken out to access, the input normal connections, or just a parallel output set. So there's no real plan in mind at the moment for any expansion, but they're there to give me the option. I mean, this is something where, it's always exciting with a new module coming out. Like, we have no idea how it's going to be received, or what sort of scale it's going to be at. So the Leon's a fairly conservative first production run, which is already far exceeding our expectations of what the response has been, which is awesome. So at this stage we'll be keeping open ears for any examples of how people are using it, any suggestions. So the 6 input expansion pins, they connect through to the normal pins of all the input jacks. The output ones, I think they're just pulled straight from the output tip pins of each output. So if you're like to break the normal, it would break the signal cascading down in the same way as if you were just patched out. So it's just parallel outputs.
Yeah.
So it's, it gives the option of, I think we test it so that if you did patch, if you use like a 2x3 connector from output to input of 2 Leons, then the outputs would then go to the 6 inputs, and you would get a sort of cascading effect. Yeah.
We've got those on Oct. Someone asked me recently what the 8-pin headers were, because there's a 10-pin power up top, and they are cores of the LFOs and mirrors of the LFO
So
outputs.
one of the block of 8 is all the raw triangles. The other one's the raw square waves from the main flip flops at the oscillator core. So we've got the option of doing something with all 8 outputs, or all 16 parallel outputs.
Yeah, and we had lots of module ideas at the time, but again, not knowing how well Oct would do, it was, do we follow up with an expander that never sells? Do we really want to pin down what an expander should be at this stage? And we're still floating ideas around, but I like that idea when you brought up of just future-proofing it. If we want something to connect into, it could be anything else that you do. It could be, I quite like the idea of it connecting to something else. Not that, I mean, someone else should go and design one. Just things like when IntelliGel made, was it the Mind Meld for the Vulkan modulator from Livewire? I think it was the first thing that IntelliGel did, was like some switching of the LFOs on one of the Livewire modules. Like, that's kind of cool. So I quite like this idea of like, there are pins with outputs on the back to be kind of played with. There may be an expander. As I say, ideas are flying around, but that's what they are. Future-proofing is a nice way to put it. One question about the expansion. Analog Kid in the chat said an idea for the expander would be to have a small 4HP module with some basic utilities like VCAs, low pass gates, or attenuation, with a TRS in and another jack and pot for a specific function. Not quite sure what you're imagining. You can maybe come back with another comment if you can add some clarity to that. We spoke about ideas of little kind of pots inside jacks and other things. Someone did share a thread, I think it was for the Hordike matrix, which there's some similarities that we'll come on to that in a second. Those being 1/4-inch jacks, it was a Muff Wiggler thread. Someone had quite elegantly managed to put a mini pot in the 1/4-inch sleeve. I thought, that's pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you realise that it's a much bigger jack.
We actually tried that with one of the tall trimmer pots, like just soldering it onto a stereo pin and pinning it in, and then you've got a knob at that node. It works, but it's really fiddly, and I don't think you could fit 2 side by side if they were, horizontally spread. And then as you turn the pot, you're just turning the jack, so it's hard to know if you're actually turning the attenuation up or down, or just physically spinning the whole thing in the node. But there's a few ideas we've been bouncing around. So again, it'll depend on I guess the scale of how many Leons end up out there. I think we've not come to like a conclusion of what the threshold is, but like once there's a certain number out there, because I don't expect everyone that has a Leon to buy a potential expander for it. So it's already a reduced scale of what could sell. So it's a few factors.
Yeah, it's the same with any kind of expander, isn't it? That the potential for a module being released is the modular market. Now, not everybody's going to buy one, of course, but there's a wide open, the market may be interested. If you sold 10, 100, 1,000 of a module, it's then a percentage of that sold amount of modules, and it kind of really decreases down. And dedicating, just speaking for everyone generally, not to speak for Jason specifically, but to then dedicate time to developing something that might take as long as a module, but may only have 10% of X sales amount of interest, or it's a tricky thing. It's definitely a tricky thing.
Yeah, like one vague idea is to do something that could act as an expander, but in itself, would function fully as a module in itself. So something that an idea would be to have a few processing stages. So it could be a couple of VCAs, a couple of attenuverters, or a couple of low pass gates, and then they could be used directly to affect like a node mix point of the Leon. But if there's a way to have it patchable on the front on its own, that's one idea. That's the sort of the looking like the most versatile.
Analog Kid came back in the chat. What I think, correct me again if I'm wrong, but I think the point is that having a TRS cable out of Leon would allow you to go in and out of something and save a socket's worth of space on an expander. So it could be an attenuator is simply one socket and one pot, or a low pass gate would be you'd need the CV for the low pass gate and the in and out. Could work.
Yeah, that's definitely the most elegant way to do it. I guess the main drawback is going to be you're going to need to get some stereo patch cables into the mix as well, which it just gets it adds more stuff that is just required for patching in a system in itself. So it's definitely an idea. I think that's a good solution to it, but it definitely comes with its own caveats. So.
We'll wrap through a few more questions. Maybe not every single one. I have taken note of them all, so do keep them coming in the chat. I'll keep copying into my document. Omri Cohen, Sir VCV Rack himself. Hey Omri. Question for you: how do you use modular in your music? He knows that you play guitar. I now know you play violin, as does everyone else. Wondering how you connect both worlds.
I've not for a while. That's the short answer, I guess. Like on the powwow live stream performances, those are probably some of the last more significant patches that I've built, like as in preparation for a performance. For using guitar, the last time I did it, it was this was before we actually had the arbor designed and out. So I was using using clouds mainly for granular processing, and so I've got a prototype of an input module which has been leaked. I mean, like I posted pictures of it way back, but it's like a Combi Jack XLR TRS, so it would be mic and line and instrument level. So I was using that for guitar getting into the system, and then using just envelope followers, and then just a few different. I think I broke out the envelope and then had a couple of different threshold levels. So it was like kind of tier threshold. So I could really play with dynamics to then trigger events. So, if I hit it with a higher amplitude impulse, then it would change, it would scatter and change all the parameters of clouds just through a bunch of sample and holds, stuff like that. So being able to play the dynamics to control the patching, that way I'm hands off the modular for the most part, and able to control a lot of the processing elements directly from the amplitude. There's one of the main. I think there's a couple of patches I've done using guitar. One of them's on YouTube. It's one of the Powwow Glasgow performances. I think maybe the second one that we did, and that's a performance that is guitar into modular, and I was using the harmony with like a pre-built harmony voice where I was manually playing through the chord progression in performance mode, and then just adding tensions and expanding the harmony, and then just improvising over it on the guitar.
And I've just shared that link. Just broke off for a second there to
cool.
grab that link. It's in the chat if you want to watch it after the stream. Stick with us. Jason playing guitar into the modular. I like that idea of like a bank of comparators with that kind of stepped thresholds for playing. It's almost like how building more comprehensive sample instruments are built with velocity layers that stagger up, but then the scaling in between. It allows you to really connect to what's going on easily, and those comparators might allow you to then drive sequences and beats and rhythms. Funny comment that caught my attention as well. Gerald Ford is with us. Hey Gerald, and just says his Scion tattoo just lit up as he entered the chat. Possibly the only person with an Instruo tattoo
that I know of.
Maybe drop a picture of the tattoo, Gerald, on your Instagram stories, and I'll pop a link in the chat in a second to your Instagram if people want to check out a Scion tattoo. Couple more questions while I grab that link from Gerald. Again from Stu J, is there a module whose popularity surprised you, and on the other side of that coin, is there a module you're surprised that others haven't jumped on? I presume he means entirely from the Instruo range.
I think to us the most surprising was the Troika, when that launched, like before I knew what direction Instruo was going to take, because I'd sort of been working on that mainly because I wanted more analog oscillators in my system. So like the very original one, which is like the old video that's on the Instruo YouTube channel. So that's like the sort of part build doc, part music video, like time lapse of me like laying out the schematic, laying out the PCB, like milling the faceplate and everything. And so that went up before I'd even thought to launch Instruo as a modular brand, because initially it was an idea of maybe doing some modules, branding it with that, but mainly using it as an artist name and starting to focus more on music. Yeah, it was a transitional period, so I didn't really know what direction things were going to go. And I didn't intend for an analog oscillator to be the first module that would launch. I think like at the time I had the harmony in development, like early stages. So I kind of thought that's something a bit different that I haven't seen really done before with that sort of implementation of music theory and modal quantization. So that at the time was more of my plan for launching the company with something different. But then the video just sort of gained traction with the Troika. And at the time I was based in Glasgow, but still very much communicating and working with a lot of the community in the US. So I was based in Portland, Oregon for a while, and got very close with the Dark Place crew and whatnot. So they actually helped me out with getting things off the ground. And once the Troika was ready, we put out the first production run of that, which allowed me to sort of step back and be hands off, having to build them in my spare room and in a smaller flat, and focus more on development, and then just let things grow a bit more naturally. So I think the Troika was the biggest surprise to start everything out. And I think there's quite a few. Like I'm always err on the side of caution, so I always expect, okay, if we sell this many, then that's it paid for itself. It's been worth it. But if it goes beyond that, then win-wins. So yeah, like I think a lot of the more utility modules, like Vinca, Cease. I mean, the Cease has surprised me. It's been ongoing. Like I thought, there's so many envelopes and ADSRs out there. I think the Cease has got some nice tricks up its sleeve, but it's still a very fundamental module, of which there are many. So a lot of utility modules, like they always tend to be the ones that I don't expect to really take off as much, but they fill in the gaps, and they're necessary for a fuller system. So as I've wanted to transition more and more into playing with an entirely Instruo system, then I need more envelopes, I need more VCAs, modulation sources, stuff like that. So
yeah, we'll rattle through a few more questions. They're coming in.
You're muted.
Oh, you should be able to hear me. I don't think I'm muted anywhere. Can you still hear me?
Oh, I lost you entirely.
Seems like Jason's lost me. In the chat, there is about a 20-second...
My headphones have died. Hold on.
I'll talk to the chat. I'll sing a song. There is about a 20-second delay in the chat. If you can let me know that...
I'll grab my Bluetooth.
That you can hear me, that would be handy. I'll mute Jason for a second. I have got all your questions. If you can still hear me, do keep them coming. I will keep making notes. We'll break off and kind of get back onto a couple of topics, come back to Q&A, back and forth. And looks like he's back. Can you hear me, Jason?
I can hear you now. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, with a little bit of feedback, I think.
Cool. I think I might need to switch off something.
I'll give you a second. Jason is on a couple of different... That's better, that's it. Jason's on a couple of different accounts for this stream here. He's going to do a roaming phone studio tour shortly. But yeah, a couple more questions just to rattle through them. Signal sounds, again, hello. Do you think there are other creative uses for stereo jacks which haven't been explored yet?
Yes. I think there's like
that sounds like
there's so many
no more because you're exploring
out there. Yeah. One of the ideas is to use them for sending digital protocols. So like I think I2C is a format that is looking like it's more of an option for digital link between modules for expansion, stuff like that, because it's a very high speed data transfer protocol. So and it's two lines, so it's it's a clock line and a data line, so that could be shared over a TRS cable. I think there's probably many other makers and designers that have had the exact same thought. So I think it's something that will probably come to fruition at some point.
Okay. More potential. Cinematic Laboratory said you've created one of the best granulars and loopers ever. Will there be an Instruo reverb? There is one in Arbor, to be fair. There is one on the mod expander.
And I mean, looper, you can, using like the analog feedback and different delays, you can get a lot of reverberant tones. But
whatever you want to say about whatever you're working on, which bits of what you're working on I know, the fact I have to remind you of some of your own projects, I'm sure there's lots I don't know. I would be amazed if anything we ask in terms of function or type of module that we put to Jason, there's not at least an idea in the works. I would imagine you're playing around with models of, or breadboards of, or ideas. As you say, you've got modules that you want to flesh out a system with, maybe the smaller bits of utilities, things like SACE that you maybe didn't think would do as well, being an envelope, which there are many of in Euro. I'd be amazed if you weren't working on one, but say as much or as little as you like about anything.
Keep an eye out in the somewhat near future, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's just completely giving stuff away. But
well, you've certainly used the reverb at one point in your life, and I'm sure you've got ideas about it. But Guanluca, apologies if I've said the username wrong. Is there an idea for a new sequencer? I'd imagine same kind of answer. You must have played with sequencing. You had that custom. Was it the Neonic? Did you pronounce it?
Neonic,
that kind of like fader bank you could sequence through, but that was a bit of a custom kind of one-off small batch thing, was it?
Yeah, and it kind of grew arms and legs. I had various different versions of it, but it's sequences are a hard one. I think it's because there's no right way to build a sequencer interface. Like everyone's got their preference, be it like just a keyboard where you hold down the notes and it automatically sequences those, or something more analog where it's a bank of faders to dial in. Like there's so many different ways to do it, and yeah, it's a tricky one. Like I'm trying to come up with the thing that makes sense to me. So design the ultimate sequencer that I see myself using in a system more the issue is it's maybe not going to tick all the boxes for everyone else, because it's a bit more of a, I think, it's more of a polarizing topic as far as module types go. I think it's a tricky one, but I've got I do have something in the works. With all that said, so
I've just typed out what I said before. I'd genuinely be stunned if you didn't have kind of one of everything, if not multiples of, in the works of most kind of things. Luke Fowler asked about Leon. Can it be used with balanced outboard or unbalanced modular sims like a Surge?
not really. It's all, like, all the outputs are just standard modular. It's just 1K impedance output mono. And the stereo jack implementations, it's not balanced signals. It's send and return.
Yeah.
Essentially from tip to ring. So, yeah.
Yeah, if you had a balanced interface or an interface for the 6 ins and outs that would take your balanced I/O, then yeah. But it's not. They're not balanced, as you say. The patch points aren't balanced connections. It is send and return on the tip and the ring. Yeah. Marked modular. Hey, Marked. Do you have a small shelf of modules that were developed but never quite made it into production? And to follow up, is it frustrating if that happens, or do you just accept it's part of the process?
There's a long list and a growing pile. And there's even some over there. Modules that have, I mean, they're built, like there's fully working prototypes. There might be some tweaks that are needed. It varies. Like when I'm prototyping, like I might design something that's an idea, or it's like a new circuit architecture that I'm trying to wrap my head around. So I'll just build a prototype. Like at this stage, I've got a large library of circuits and schematics that I've tried and tested. So a lot of the time it's like a combination of multiple ones or integrating something new into it. So a lot of the time I'll just design it and create a full panel layout so that it's a finished module, if it works, which sometimes they don't, but or they take like a severe amount of circuit bending to get them behaving. But it means that if it works, then I can try it out in context, patch with it, and then adapt it and develop it from there.
I'm still just copying across from the chat, so apologies if I look like I'm looking off at something else. Questions are coming in so thick and fast. I think I've got them all. We'll have a couple more, and then we'll get back to the new bits of modules, and then we'll jump back to more Q&A shortly. Dennis Sirkov, hello from Greece. He wants to ask about how to stabilize the frequency in the oscillator. Doesn't say which one, possibly an Instruo oscillator. His oscillator is drifting with a temperature change of about 2 cents per degree. Any ideas for helping temperature stabilize an oscillator that isn't butchering the circuit to do so?
I've got temperature compensation in all the oscillators. So if it's really wobbling, then there could be something wrong. There could be some, like a weak solder joint at the Temco even. So get in touch, send me an email, and maybe capture a short video like showing where it's wavering. If you're hands-on with DIY and with a soldering iron, then I'll be able to like point out sections to try, just hit them with the iron reflowing, and hopefully that's stabilized it. If not, get in touch, and if it's drastic and needs to come in for servicing, that's always an option.
Big thank you to Breaker, Stu J, and Sana for the super chats in there. Really appreciated. Thanks for supporting these streams. I did have one idea, which was the fan. I was going to say fan synth. I forget the full name of it. The fan from Mutant Modular Eurorack fan. I know Chris Meyer was having some really good results of it, bringing a few degrees down around. I think it was his WMD performance mixer. It was kicking out a lot of heat. I'll try and find a link shortly and put that in the live chat for the fan. I did pick a couple up, but I've no real world tests yet as to how much heat that's helping dissipate or blow out the side of a case or something. What's all this chatter about Harmon Egg Expander? I saw it on the TMZ, which apparently is like a celebrity gossip page. Jason in the chat.
Harmony expander.
He was just joking around because I had to ask, what's the TMZ? Like, is there some group somewhere chatting expanders I don't know about? What I think the core of that is, he wants a Harmony expander. To do what, I don't know. However, it's purely a joke. If that doesn't bring anything up for you, we'll move on to Storm Elder. Again, apologies if I've said that wrong. We mentioned VCV Rack, which for Omri Cohen, who's here in the stream with us in the chat. Any plans to get involved in any way, like official parts of Instruo modules? I feel bad. There's going to be so many questions here that I just, whether I know anything or not, there's going to be so much just through the nature of you just doing everything and having all these ideas. You're going to be spilling beans all over the place.
I'll say soon.
Okay. Yeah. I don't want to try and filter what I'm asking too much. Me not asking a question when I'm asking all the questions is potentially also a giveaway. So I've got to throw them all at you and let you kind of try and stern face it out. Again, another question from Omri. What made you decide to add the condenser mic to Arbor? It's such a nice addition and makes exploration of sound so easy.
I think that was quite late on in the design, because I had the bulk of the interface laid out already, and because the initial granular engine that's Sebastian's work, I think he had it ported over to run on a looper, so that we had a module working with it, and then all the knobs were just remapped. So as I was developing the interface for that and the layout, I was just playing about with different ideas, and yeah, I'm not sure what the original spark of that idea was, but I think probably because we use the ears module, the music thing modular, or the mutable version. Having contact mics built in is really cool, but I hadn't seen the little electric capsule condenser mics built into anything yet, so tried to squeeze it in, and it seemed to work.
Yeah. There was one that just caught my attention related. Oh, regarding the Harmony, people are saying microtonal Harmony, more scales, custom scales. You can punch in active notes on it anyway, can't you? So you can customize.
Yeah, but the quantizer engine, it's equal powered. Not
equal temperament.
Equal temperament. Yeah. And the main focus on that was implementing all the different modal harmonizations and sort of diatonic chord scales with expanded, the non-diatonic scale tones of each mode having something that's harmonically relevant.
Yeah.
But yeah, the microtonal stuff, there's ideas I've got, but it's how to best implement it and then add the ability to really dial in what's wanted.
Yeah, there's someone in the chat mentioning their Troika is drifting out of tune and that they'd emailed. Using the contact on the website is the best way to get hold of you, right?
Yeah, although I do get a lot of emails. So if you have sent something and it's not gone responded to, it's possible it's just gotten buried. Please do resend. So apologies if anything does get missed.
Yeah.
I try and keep on top of emails as best as possible.
Well, the amount of questions in this stream just plowing through, and it's got you and that have my attention, and I still feeling a bit cross-eyed trying to keep up with both. Never mind brainstorming so many module ideas. Let's just say a couple more questions, then we'll get back to it. Thomas Sims, do you design the panel art yourself, or are you paying someone else to do it?
I do all the panel art. So we've got a Dom who's a full-time member here. So he's the actual experienced graphic designer. So you can thank him and Colin Russell for all the documentation and having it it look as good as it does. Because if it was entirely up to me, it would just be pages of nonsense or clip art. So. Yeah, but the actual module interface designs, I've got a sort of method that I've just sort of developed over time, where I've got a few vague sort of spacing rules that I keep to, and then very much sort of jump between a sort of crude Eagle CAD layout where I've got all the components on to make sure it will fit on the PCB itself, and then and then bring those coordinates into Illustrator and then just try different things. And there's a few little like graphical like lines, like just ways of linking components, highlighting things. So a lot of the time, like CV inputs, I've got a circle around them, and there's lines linking stuff. So I've got a sort of method, but it's really hard to quantify what it is. I kind of just like move stuff around until it looks right, and I know when it's not quite there, but it's getting close. So I mean that could be quite a fun topic to dive into in the future, on a future live stream or something, because it's a question I've gotten quite a few times, and it's hard to say what the method is, but I've got like a lot of the files I've got, it's got like different iterations, and like some of them you can kind of see the progression, and where it's like, okay, I'll move that up there, and that sort of led off to these lines that sort of sit naturally, and I kind of just trial and error.
Andrew Marshall asked, how many employees do you have hand assembling the modules? You can talk about assembly, but earlier we said 7 full-time and kind of up to 14 with part-time freelancers.
Yeah, at the moment we've got 6 soldering stations set up, so you can see like the main ones behind me at the moment. So we're at the point where it's sort of working against social distancing rules, so that we've got enough space between folks so everyone feels comfortable. But the aim is to have all 6 irons running as many days a week as possible.
Final one before we move on from questions for a moment. But again, Stu J, just doing these in the order that they were sent through, says, this is a comment, not a question, scratch that, a question too. Kudos to your customer service, which has been really fast and often really personal, in a good way, kind of taking the time to be personal with Stu with any questions in the past. How do you find the time?
I don't really do anything else. So
I was just kind of thinking, just doing that.
I've got all my
else.
emails come through my phone. My watch dings anytime there's an email. So if I'm in the midst of something, I've gotten into the habit of, if it dings, if I can get the gist of what the inquiry is. If it's something I can respond to quickly, I'll just jump over to my laptop and send back a response. But yeah, like there are things that get missed at times, because if it's a busy week with lots of calibration needed doing, then I'm stuck at the calibration station, and then emails back up, and the same with development cycles, stuff like that. So it's a constant battle.
Someone says it gets dark in Scotland, long nights to work through. But just getting back on topic, we'll come back to the questions I have up to this point, copied them all in the document, keep them coming, I'll keep copying them through, and we'll get to them all before I finish later this evening. With Leon, we had a few questions saying it's similar to the Hordike module, and wanted to kind of put that question to you. Is there any kind of homage to that, any influence from the Hordike node matrix in the Hordike system, or just that general?
It's something I should have recognized, because I've met Rob several times at your Leeds events, and watched a lot of his videos, seen him giving presentations, but I don't think I saw any of the ones in person that he directly showed off his matrix mixer. So I knew vaguely there was such a thing. IMO kind of designed the Leon, or put together the prototype in a bubble, so he didn't know of the Hordike matrix mixer until I guess like the day or two before launch, when someone posted a question about it, and we're like, oh yeah, that's the same method. So
it's been done in studios,
I mean,
though, as we say.
I've got a dialogue going on with Rob, so I'll be placing an order for one of his systems myself as well. But I'm just trying to say, we didn't, it wasn't a copy. It was, we were, two things happening in parallel, I guess.
Yeah, you see it done all the time. I mean, even just within the kind of walls of Eurorack, things happen. Either someone makes something, maybe they're super vocal about how new and interesting it is, and you've got to be the horrible person to just say, it's like that thing that they did a couple of years ago, right? And it's like, These happen musically even. I know people that produce
Yeah.
and write music for, say, TV or media, and they're very high output in that kind of creativity. And they're kind of blinkered. It's like, I will not listen to anything in this style because I don't want to be influenced by anything. So they maybe just listen to classical and old soul music, but they're making electronic kind of dance floor focused stuff. And they'll eventually be like, oh, that's that little riff from X. And they've never heard it before because they may be a little bit more blinkered than you are. So these things happen. And it's the concept comes from studio work, right? It's, as we say, inserts on channel strips.
Yeah. Studio patch bays.
Patch bays on.
I've been a thing for a long time.
And signal normaling in patch bays as well. Is there anything else you'd like to say regarding Leon before we maybe talk about Tine, or we have a bit of a roaming studio tour?
It's really fun.
Yeah, I found that with any kind of patch matrix that, not this one, but others I've seen and worked with, and even Rat Gear before, you kind of think it just looks a bit utilitarian. It maybe doesn't look as exciting as it can be, but I find that once you put enough information into the input section, I do think very differently in terms of workflow. I find myself thinking
it's really immediate, because even if you just sort of use a range of inputs in your patch and patch them out in various different combinations, it's so quick to just pull a pin, stick it somewhere else, and you're using a routing that you wouldn't necessarily have gone to before. So it's a way of just finding more lucky mistakes.
Yeah.
And then once you pin something, it's, oh, that's really cool. You can track through. It's like, okay, that's that input that's coming in. That's actually feeding back there. So it's a way of finding new actual patches that you wouldn't naturally go to. So it's
yeah, I find that with rhythms where you might have different rhythms for, say, a rim shot on a clap, and just doing that with the cables is quicker than trying to
voices,
copy and paste on a sequencer and overlap patterns, or going over to that part, maybe densely patched system, and trying to do it with cables that way. I find it's a really interesting way to work, definitely. Do you fancy a little kind of studio tour? Little roam around the studio?
Let's see if this works.
So, looks good to me. I've got you. I'll switch over to that camera. Okay. If we can switch to your phone camera audio as well, we can go for a little walk around the space.
Okay, microphone on the camera is active.
Yep, I can hear it. If people in the chat want to let us know that you can hear both me still and Jason, but now just on his phone, let us know you can hear us both.
Yep. So this is Winston, which I think he's appeared in a few Instagram posts at various points.
Yeah.
So he either sleeps there all day, or he's got a big bed out in the main area. So this is the main workshop. So this was the first room that we renovated in this building for purpose. So we moved in here. You came up to visit the last trip up, which was to look at the oct, to finalize the oct values, and I give you a run around the building. At that stage, it was I think renovations had begun, but it was still very warehousey and very very bare. So
it was, yeah.
It's taken a bit of time, but we're pretty we've filled it. So here's these are the two newest soldering stations that we've put in. I think eventually we'll probably just expand around and just add more stations down here, as well as moving stuff upstairs. So this is where I'm streaming from. His desk normally. But he's away off to Aaron for the week, so I've stolen his spot and stolen his camera. So I normally work here, and there's always stuff going on. So solder stations are always manned. The thing that I wanted to ensure when coming up with the layout for the workshop was having just everyone in the same room for the most part.
Yeah.
So me and Keen and Sebastian, we'll all be coming up with ideas, prototyping stuff, experimenting stuff, discussing stuff, and it's kind what makes it fun is just having everyone chip in or give suggestions, and it's just an open floor, an open forum for for ideas just bouncing around. And then, normally we scribble things up on the whiteboard. At the moment, this is the new system for keeping track of what stock has actually been taken from the storeroom. So it's not as fun as when you were up with content on the whiteboard.
Yeah, you weren't just pointing at all the secrets there, unless someone's really concerned about your potentiometer account or something.
Yeah. So this is the main entrance here, and kind of just the general lounge / bike storage. I need to figure out a better solution for it. Arcade machine, which was a must-buy when we were setting up the space. So it's just a Raspberry Pi. I mean, this is just a very big cabinet that's used for storage, and then it's just a single Raspberry Pi 3 that's in there running emulators. The fish, Winston's Red. This is a new addition while we're the world's in lockdown. So I hope you don't mind.
No, I've got a beer on the go.
I'll just go with a half.
So we should say,
I'm not sure what keg we've got at the moment, but we have it's becoming more of a standard.
I was going to say, we should say that this is all, well, aside from the production space there, which you work with, but isn't entirely yours, this is all Instruo space. This isn't a kind of shared office space where you just have a room that you rent, right?
Yeah. So I teamed up with my friend Simon, who runs what's now called Subsign Academy. So it's a music production school here in Glasgow. So he's run the music school for many years. Like, we met, I think, way back, like when I was still with Qubit, still based in the US, and he was buying a nebulae, so we just got in touch and kept in touch, and then I met up when I came back to Glasgow on a trip, and so he was running out of what were my previous premises as well, because I ended up subletting and moving into their spot, and we started looking a year or two ago, like just seeing what was available in Glasgow as like commercial properties, so that we could team up, get something that we could make our own and grow both our businesses. So it's been it's actually come together so much quicker than it felt. Like I think we bought it a year last March, and it was months of renovation, which didn't actually take as long as it felt. But it's definitely we've been able to expand and scale up everything. So
thanks to Unite in the chat, or Unit:E in the chat, for your super chat donation. Couple of questions on the kind of studio tour point. Was that a 2600, an ARP 2600, and is that a Yamaha U3 piano?
Yeah, I'll go back to the classroom. That's my TTSH. It's the V3 version. The reverb tank I need to properly install, but the rest of it's all fully functional.
Is that the Ross Lamond woodwork in the end, or did that not?
It is, yeah. I managed to twist his arm and get him to manage to commission one. So I think this is the only TTSH with the full brass nuts on it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was a fun build. I challenged myself. I actually built it in a weekend, which was a very long weekend.
Yeah. Wow.
Managed to pull it off. There's a good range of stuff. So this is all the gear that's in the classroom, which is serving as size studio at the moment, while we're currently renovating another spot downstairs here to get it fit for my own studio and Simon. So I actually have somewhere to make some more noise.
But it's an amazing space. There's an upstairs, there's more rooms. I do remember the construction site, that kind of vibe that it was last year when I was here. I really look forward to seeing what this grows into. As you say, actual studios in there as well, classroom, potential build space for things. Obviously, your workshop as Instruo.
Yep. So this is the additional storage. We've got a storeroom downstairs, which is in the back corner, and then so this is where everything gets boxed, and yeah, so it's another batch of Leons, and so we've got Octs and CSLs and Troikas, I think. So they're getting ready to go out Tuesday, I think. So it's been, a lot of the upstairs in the whole building was like, office space. So this used to have like a drop ceiling that was, quite cramped. So we've just been going mad, pulling stuff out and, making more fit for purpose. So this is the fun room. Because just about everyone on the team, plays instruments. So we've basically got the Instruo ensemble, which it goes from being a blues band one week to, I don't know, we ended up in reggae territory last week, I think. So, yeah, we're kind of like, everyone's just sort of, it's a room that we can just pool all our equipment and, make noise. Like just, break time. Okay, we'll just go upstairs and jam for a bit.
Yeah, it's really healthy.
It's a combination of my drums and some of the, some various cymbals owned by other folk that are working. So the Rhodes is getting fixed at the moment.
Ooh, it's really creatively healthy, I think, and to do that with a team, it's a bit like Questlove. From the Roots, the drummer Questlove has often spoke about for bands how important it is to go and eat together and be together outside of the band, and just how that kind of relationship and atmosphere is formed. So it's really nice to see the pinball machine and the kegs and everything else.
And the table tennis table. So we do get work done, but there's definitely striking a good balance so that it's not just working constantly and just building. So we'll build, and then there'll be a challenge for either a Mario Kart or so that's a frequent occurrence at the moment as well.
Nice. Yeah, a lot of comments in the chat about how nice, inspiring workspace, really cool space to be. Mason in the chat said, "I hope some of those Octs are heading to Germany." They'll be going to distribution from you, so I presume you'll be able to answer exactly where they're going. But another related question, where you mentioned the CSLs, your complex oscillator. Clay Byers did ask a question on availability. They understand that logistics and supply chains are really kind of out of whack at the minute, but will CSL continue to be made, and they're hoping to pick one up in the future?
Yeah, we're still trying to find the best balance of building all the new stuff that's now ongoing, but as well as having a constant turnover of the rest of the range. So there's constantly like a mix of different modules going out every week.
Yeah,
and we kind of just weight it based on what the distribution numbers look like.
Yeah, you're back on other camera now.
Cool. I can put my phone down.
Yeah, there you go. I could see you holding the phone. I thought, you sit down. We'll move across. Yeah, great. Well, let's dive into a few more questions just to chip away at the list before we talk Tine and Switch ideas as well. Jason in the chat mentioned getting some real kind of crushing feedback when they unplug and input a medium and above volume on the Arbor, with it having the condenser microphone on there. Just saying, any remedy? Scared to remove anything if the gain input is up. Someone in the chat already said you can plug a cable into the onset. A dummy cable in the onset will help alleviate that. Any other ideas?
The onset. I'll mute my mic on the phone. You still hear me?
Yeah, there we go.
Yep, cool. Oh, I can't hear you now. Hold on.
Okay, you're bouncing between two
There
call accounts. Sorry about that double voice. Someone in the chat did say mute the phone mic, and double voice delaying. Apologies. If we said anything then you didn't understand or want, let us know in the chat. We'll repeat ourselves. But for now, we'll keep going. The question was about getting feedback when you unplug the input on Arbor because it has the inbuilt condenser microphone. Any solutions?
So if you... the only best way to do it is to pull down the level, the input level pot. before unplugging. Because if you patch a dummy cable into, actually no, if you patch a dummy cable into the onset, that it's the normal from the microphone to onset, which then normals to the input. So yeah, that is a solution.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Dummy into onset. Dummy cable, we mean just a cable that isn't connected. Could just be an empty cable. You could even plug a Leon patch cable in if you wanted, right? Have a hoop.
Yeah, I think that should do it. It would just push the spring back, so it's not connected anymore.
Cinematic Laboratory. He just found out that Scion can be run by connecting an oscillator to the bio input. Is there a better way to use Scion without a plant or something that is alive?
So the algorithm in Scion is looking for rising edge signals primarily. So a lot of audio signals will work. Patching just white noise in will just sort of keep it automatically ticking over. Depending on what the main audio content of your patch is, there have been some times where I've used like a buffered split of the main final audio of my patch, patching that into the sense input on the Scion, and then essentially the whole thing is feedback. So the sound generated by the entire patch is what's driving the Scion, which is generating the control, which is interesting. But yeah, it's sort of like harsher rising edges that it's looking for. So like square wave signals will definitely work, and noise is enough. White noise is enough to tick it over.
Yeah. Nice simple one from Mason Vague. How do you pronounce IO47, your filter module? I presume I'm right with IO47. I may be wrong.
Yeah, I think just shorthand in the workshop we just refer to as the 1047 because it's the 1047 2500 module that it's largely based on. But yeah, IO47 I guess is the what's written on it. So, but that or 1047.
Yep, and keeping the questions going. Where did the ideas for the trading card teasers come from? Seems like the perfect pairing. Trading card collectors have the same mentality as Eurorack collectors, and that's from Cats Can Meow.
Cool. Yeah, that was exactly my theory. I mean, it's an idea I had way back, early Instruo days. I was like, oh, it'd be cool to eventually have like a range of modules and do like Pokemon card and Magic the Gathering card style like promo things, and we ran out of stickers fairly a bit before the cards came to fruition, and I was like, oh, I can either order a new set of vinyl stickers, or I could use that same budget and stretch out a bit and get a full set of actual playing card, like printed playing cards made. So again, you can thank Dom for that. Like he took the idea and rolled with it, and it's amazing. Like there's 25 different cards. So some of the modules are existing ones. There are a few that like the Leon was essentially soft announced with the cards going out because
people have seen
I think they're weighted in rarity as well, so kind of based on the scale of production of certain modules. So like the smaller ones, like the 2F, which are much higher quantity made or much easier to make, and also lower price. So it's kind of a balance between quantity that are out there and the pricing for how rare the cards are.
Yeah. You were certainly, I don't think you had them, but you mentioned them, and I met Dom for the first time when I came up to develop Oct with you last summer. You talked about it. I finally got my own shiny good. Oct. I now have a non-shiny and shiny Oct card.
There are a small number of shinies that make them wear out. Like we kind of just do it every large batch of modules. Like if there's like a 100 or so in a getting boxed at once, then we'll chuck a shiny in somewhere, and they're randomized as well. So there's certain shinies that are like the ultra rare shinies because there's only like one of them in a deck.
Okay.
And they get shuffled and then just put in at random.
I feel special. These were in the Tine Switch modules, which is the next module we'll talk about, and a video that's coming from me later this coming week as well. for that one. We'll get to that shortly after a few more questions. Andrew Marshall, having learnt that you played classical violin, do you play in any orchestras for a hobby? Do you miss playing orchestra? They say they miss playing orchestrally themselves in Slawit. I always pronounce that wrong, which is where I used to have drum lessons when I was at Huddersfield University. It's over that neck of the woods. Apologies for completely butchering that name. But they miss playing in orchestras themselves. Do you play at all, or have you played in orchestras?
Not for a while. When I was in college, I was in a small chamber orchestra, and ended up playing second violin position, and it was great fun. It's a while since I've actually played in a more classical ensemble like that. So I sort of focused more on building up a fiddle tune repertoire, and I spent a while street performing in Edinburgh. So for a certain amount of time, I went back when I had long dreadlocks. I had a full setup where it was pirate costume, playing fiddle tunes, standing on a bollard on the Royal Mile.
Nice. I never went. Maybe I did. No, I didn't ever go pirate costume. I had full on Jesus locks for many years, long hair down my back, but I didn't have. I don't think I ever went the dread route. Yeah, a few more questions. Again, I think I've got all of them, but do keep them coming. And if we miss one, you're welcome to ask again. Sana in the chat, how about a patch tip for a module that you've discovered but maybe not shared yet?
Discovered or not shared yet?
You
mean like another module that's out there that I've got and I've been patching with?
Yeah, I guess your own modules, a little patch tip or patch idea that maybe hasn't been talked about. We certainly talk about patch ideas when we're working together on a video coming up. I will say, anything you want to get in there, and I always say that when I'm doing demos with people, and a lot of the time I go, no, do your thing, you know what you're doing. But the reason I always ask, and it's a frequency central module, I forget which one. We're talking 5-6 years ago, so an early video for me on YouTube. And they said, hey, if you'd have inverted that modulation, it would have sounded like bacon frying. And bacon frying's not important to having a video demo, but it would have been a good 10 seconds of just like, hey, invert your modulation to sound like a frying pan. And I did that patch after the video went live, and they didn't know what I was going to do, so they didn't know to suggest it, but it came out afterwards. So we always have this conversation. And the Instruo manuals have some nice patch examples in there, visually and as text documented. We discuss it to get them in the videos we do together. But yeah, any particular little patch tips or anything you've been playing with that maybe is not so obvious?
Quite recently, I've been digging into a few patch examples using the Vinca for various, future videos, stuff like that. There's a few interesting ones. Like if you multiply, use a sine wave and multiply it by itself, then you basically fold it up to being the twice frequency but DC offset version of itself. And doing that and multiplying it, so ring mod multiplication from a single oscillator using different sources. You get some really interesting wave shapes from that.
Yeah, I've been playing around.
That's one that comes to mind from like recent thing.
Yeah, I've been playing around with octave ideas, just forming my own general ideas for that, using ring mods with the same X and Y signals, using rectifiers, and then having to offset them, and kind of chains of these to create octaves. And those, when you rectify waves, you get the kind of odd kinks in them, so harmonically they're different.
Mm-hmm.
Subdividing's quite easy if you're going to do it with pulses, or let the subdivision be just a square wave. It's quite easy to kind of divide something down in terms of audio. Just kind of mass spans of octave creation is something I've been playing with. Possibly something that'll be in the Tine video as well. Cinematic Laboratory again. Will the alien faceplate for the is it tag, the random generator,
the tie?
Yeah. Will that be up for on sale one day? I need to move that out of sight in any video that I do, because it comes up constantly. People have seen it and they want one.
Yeah, unfortunately not. It's actually, I'll jump over to the modular cam. Yeah, so that guy there, this is the original. and it's it's just a tie with a silly faceplate on it. But the iconography that's from Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, which I completed a couple of summers ago, and completed the expansion pack. I was like, oh, now I need to wait for the sequel or the prequel whenever it comes out. Although they've announced the prequel, which is already pre-ordered here. So, but yeah, like it's my fan art for that video game, I guess. But I don't think I can sell it because it's not my design, my graphics. So it's a tribute. Like there are only 3 of these modules that exist. You've got one. There's one that's here, and then another was a gift for a friend of mine.
Couple more questions. SynthDog in the chat. Hello. Interesting to hear about the guitar interface. I wonder if you've any thoughts on interfacing iOS with Eurorack, either Bluetooth or wired. And then Gerald, Sir Sion Tattoo himself, mentioned Aether, was it? With the Parrot Plus app?
Ether, yeah.
That already exists. Anything to kind of add to that other than me sharing a link to that module?
So Ether is effectively out of production at this time, unfortunately. There are few parts that are easily sourced. I mean, even before COVID hit and supply chain took a hit, we were struggling to source a lot of the parts. It was an earlier design. It was the first collaboration that I did with Sebastian, so it's a while ago now that we did it. So we can't actually build them, which is unfortunate. But we do have plans for a V2. No time frame at the moment, but it's on the list. We've got a sort of growing bullet point list of what features to incorporate. And as far as for more iOS integration, there's something else in the works as well, which will kind of be in parallel to that. So there's things happening.
Okay. Omri Cohen, again, it looks like from how you package your modules, you care about the environment, as there's no unnecessary plastic. Does that affect other aspects of your work? Environmental consciousness is the general theme.
I think the vast majority of the team here are vegetarian or vegan, if that counts. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that we're trying to find better ways of packaging. Like all the packaging is now paper and cardboard, like minimizing plastics as much as possible. Wherever I can, when I'm sourcing components, I try and get them to ship it with, using fewer individually packaged, plastic bags, stuff like that. But certain sources, they have a system that is how they do it. A lot of factories in China, they're going for speed. They're going for optimization of the production. So yeah, anything that we can do here, we do our best to.
We had a couple of, just to round out this little bit of the Q&A, we had a few questions that I'll kind of round into one thing. Stu J started by saying that, would you consider doing a, quote, micro tip set of videos a la Alex at WMD? For example, here's a 5-minute video explaining a specific routing on the CSL. So they really love the long walkthroughs, but that would be great. And we had other kind of suggestions or requests for, make noise style patch tip videos or other just general short patch tips. Considering how busy you are and knowing how much effort goes into producing video, which I think, gets missed sometimes. Yeah, is that on the cards? Is more videos, more long form videos, short form videos? It's a plan.
It's there's a few pieces of kit that I've been investing in and experimenting with to try and find an optimum setup that we can just have a system set up, cameras on it, and just hit record and then just capture things so that we're minimizing the amount of editing is needed to be done. So it's a plan, but it's sort of working between certain key members of the team that are still working remotely. Then trying to find the best format to actually consistently create content. But as we expand more, the upstairs of the building, that's one of the plans, is to have like a dedicated area that is, cameras just sort of permanently set up, so that we can quickly just like, throw down a system and just capture stuff. Even like, we need to come up with a better way of creating more regular content for things like Instagram. Because that's something that I delegate a bit more these days. Because if it's very tempting to just throw up random photos, but we try and like keep it a bit more tidy, and just have a bit more of a plan for things. So there's more of a burst of content that goes up around about a module launch, stuff like that, and then we'll go a bit quiet. But the plan is to increase content a bit more.
Yeah. It's not as there's a couple of comments in the question in the live chat, sort of, have someone else do it or get an intern in to do it. It's not quite so simple, having explored help and things like that myself. But I know it will be a serious consideration. Anyway, a nice fun one to end on, again from Omri Cohen. Will Scion work with mushrooms?
I don't know. Someone emailed me about that recently, and I've not tried it because I don't have any live growing mushrooms that I know of in the workshop. If you try it, let me know, because that would be cool.
Yeah, officially works with mushrooms. There'd be a nice kind of tag for Scion, which reads biosignals. I did link Scion earlier. If there's any modules we're talking about that people don't know what we're referencing along the way, if you go to instruomodular.com/modules, I've just dropped that link in the chat now as well. You'll find them all there. Mark Modular says a collab with Alex from Signal Sounds for videos would be great. His old rubber dub ones are a hoot. Yeah, more Alex on video.
That's a plan. I want more Alex, but he's got his hands full with everything.
So we should talk about Tine dual switch, which has maybe do you want to fire off a kind of hit list of potential uses for this one? It's on the face of it, a simple analog bidirectional switch, which means two inputs can be switched between to an output, or one input can switch to two different destinations, and you get two channels of that. Yep. It's momentary, so it will switch over from an in or an out while the gate is high or the button, or it will latch. So you would take a trigger or a gate to switch, and it will wait for another one to switch back again. You can kind of create flip-flop like chains through them. But yeah, it'd be nice to kind of hear that from you, from the kind of conception of the module, and kind of hit list of potential uses for people. I'll put the module up on screen as we do so as well.
Cool. Yeah, it's conceptually it's very simple, and it's no different than a single pole double throw. Is that the right term? Yeah, I think switch for just a single source going to two destinations. Like an on-on switch. So there are various implementations of this already in Eurorack, but there are a few things that I wanted to try and work in. So like the lower input-output on each channel, it has a normalized reference voltage, which you can actually dial in via the little trim pot that's accessible in the front. So it means that you can use it if you're using just a single output on either of the channels, and either momentary or latching, control the button, you can toggle in a reference voltage, and it can be dialed in to be from -10 to +10. So it can just be like a single offset that's used. The whole thing is analog, so it's using like the DG series of switch ICs, which are a really low resistance on. I think it's sub 100 ohm resistance, and being analog, you can clock it at full audio rate, so it becomes really powerful for splicing waveforms. So if you're using just a single oscillator, so there's some examples I use with the TSL in the recent video, where I'm using the sub output or the square wave output to control the switching, and then mixing two of the waveforms from the TSL itself.
the kind of waveform slicing with the TSL is great. I'm just going to avoid any kind of onset dizziness of rapidly scrolling down the PDF. I'm going to try and find that example in the manual, as there's a really nice use case for it. Where are we looking? It was...
Yeah, the manuals ended up quite long, even for just a utility analog switch. But we went with A5 page size, because one thing I realized, like, just working with a lot of people that use modulars, like, oh, we've got a new module, we're trying to figure out how to use it. Everyone pulls up their phone, so you're always viewing user manuals on a phone.
Yeah.
So if it's like A4 layout, or even worse, if it's like A4 landscape pages, you're always having to like zoom in and like scroll across. So that was one of the design aspects that we kept in mind. So it's all A5 size, so it should hopefully be quite legible on a phone screen.
Yeah,
which is the plan.
So the waveform slicing is there, and the idea is that because you have a sub on the TSL, the oscillator that's to the left of it there, you could take two waveforms, in this case the wave folded and the PWM, which is all sorts of interesting pyramid kind of stacks, not just standard PWM.
Yeah.
And then using the sub square wave to then switch between the two waves. It's how the waveform select on the Casio CZ synths worked. I'll maybe see if I can find an image, but you could pick two waveforms for the phase distortion synthesis on the Casio CZs, but instead of mixing, say, a square and a saw, it would play a cycle of a square and then a cycle of a saw after it. You're kind of creating a double cycle waveform. And that's what's going on with this idea of the waveform splicing. It will switch perfectly between a cycle of one and a cycle of the other. So if you wanted two cycles of a sine and then two of a triangle, or one of a sine and one of a triangle, depending on the subtuning, you get some really interesting effects. And you could also then start to slice that at rates that aren't synced from the same oscillator and get into some odd...
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of
if you're using two different oscillators, you get the additional tones coming in.
Yeah. Some nice kind of love for the offset, saying that people have been using offset modules with other switches, and this would replace all of them. I like that, when a module kind of comes along and goes, that thing that took me 4 modules, that's nice. Certainly for performance. There's some other interesting examples as well. It was nice to see Oct in there. This was one that I'd not thought to try, to be honest, when I've not patched Oct into it yet. With them being free running, I guess my mind just went to not switching them at kind of odd points in the waveform, but then I was like, that's exactly why it would be interesting, because it will create these odd kinks and steps. So this example is using two outputs from Oct, so two triangle LFOs, and using another one at a different rate, all just the free running kind of unsynced non-divided rates that Oct is, and then you'll get some interesting nice kind of quirky modulation from them. You could play around with...
Yeah, this one's fun as well. If you use one of the Oct outputs to self-modulate the Oct itself, because then you get those, all the weird in-between like steppy patterns, and it just adds another level of depth to the shapes that are coming out.
Yeah. I'm kind of planning out a, things you didn't know you could do with Oct video, because I think people, a little bit clickbaity of title maybe, but I think people missed the feedback in the announcement video that we did, and that you can create these odd stepped waveforms and kind of exponential bends and kind of pulls and tilts by feeding it back on itself. So it's not unseen, and certainly I've seen some people do it, but there are ways of bending these beyond triangles, and that would be a nice one for that as well. But yeah, that's a really interesting idea, and there are other examples in there as well, as you say, Colin Russell doing the manuals and Dom doing the graphics. If people have any questions for Tine or patch suggestions or things they would like to see, I'm working on the video for later this coming week, so commenting on this actual video either live now or preferably not live now as a comment that I can see tomorrow morning. If you go comment on this video, I can kind of go through and pull them, even credit some patch ideas if people want, and try and make sure they're in the video and that video answers all the questions that you might have. Yeah, more questions. They're piling in. Should we keep going with questions, or do you want to say anything else about Tine for now? We'll get through the questions. I'm keen to make sure we answer everything for everybody. Okay, Martin Rotaveria. Hi, Martin. See Martin in plenty of these streams. Curious about the Symphonian story as that ended up being released by another manufacturer. Is there anything that was? I forget his name. Apologies. I met him at
Matthias.
Matthias. Yeah, I met you, Matthias, when he was working on that at Leeds 2017. I think that year.
Yeah, a while ago. I think it was that the first Leeds that I did. The second one, maybe.
Potentially the first you came to. It wasn't the first event, but I remember meeting you both at the same time. For that one. But yeah, they're curious about Symphonian.
Kind of just a question of timing. Like just there was so much going on my end. Like I think the CSL was in its early stages at the same time as all that. So it just kind of, there were so many things building up. And yeah, I mean, it was a fun collaboration, but ultimately it was just distance as well. So I think it was ACL ended up going out with, so which they're in Berlin, so within Germany. So I think it was just a geographical optimization, if anything.
Yeah. I realised shortly after that Matthias had moved back to Germany after. I think he had some time over here. I'm not quite sure, but yeah, makes sense. And nice to kind of clear that one up for anyone curious. Clay buyers. We've had that one. Sorry, that was about the logistics and supply chains. But just to kind of clear that again, CSL. They asked, is that still going to continue to be made? You still make CSLs actively, right?
Yep.
They're still going out. Effects Music asks, Can I feed a harmony with a melody that will then get quantized? They want to output the root to some VCOs, but then use other outputs to modules like the chainsaw, which is the multi-volt per octave in SAW oscillator Swarm from Acid Rain Technology. And they just want to check they've understood that correctly. Yes, you can. You put a single module in.
Yeah.
It will quantize that to the scale, which will be, and then the root of a chord tone within that scale. And then the third, fifth, and seventh, you could patch anywhere you like. The best way to work in that regard is to get everything in tune without even plugging the volt per octave cables in. So don't plug in the root, third, fifth, and seventh. Get everything nice and locked and stable and in tune, and then feed them their voltages to offset them into chord tones. An interesting patch for those curious with Harmonig is to feed some of those into a switch and create arpeggios. So you could feed the outs into a Tine.
Yeah, that's a very good use for the Tine, actually.
Yeah, feed them into Tine and then switch between what would be kind of static chord generation, but switching through CV to create arpeggios. And then you can do that with interesting rhythms, preset rhythms, random rhythms, Euclidean rhythms, using them to switch. S. Finn asked, can you recommend an artist that you've recently discovered? If not a recent discovery.
I'm so bad with artist names. There's a guy, I think he's based in Edinburgh, who did a full album that is heavily featuring the looper, and it's stunning. Like he must have, I'm not sure when he purchased it. Must have been quite early on after its launch to be able to pull off an entire album. Yeah, I'm so bad with names.
Don't worry.
I've got his t-shirt and everything. But it's really good.
You can, if you can, either at the end of this or maybe tomorrow, can you pop a link to that as a comment in the video? Would be cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But we had another question of a similar thing. What music have you been listening to lately? It's maybe the same answer if you're really bad with artist names.
Yeah, well, it's all jazz. We have jazz on in the workshop most of the time. That or people will just take over the Bluetooth and just be playing through the house speakers. So yeah, there was a stint of old Italian pop music, which was brilliant. So we kind of just mix it up, and like someone will take over for a day, and it's just so one day we'll have like Igor will just have like heavy metal stuff, and then it'll be jazz the next day, and then it'll be modular, and then it'll be, yeah.
I find it really refreshing. I am very loud because there's only me in this house now. That behind the door is a construction site, so partner and child have moved out. I'm still working in this back room around the construction. A good blast of some older Queens of the Stone Age recently, and a friend was like, "Oh, you still listen to that kind of stuff?" Like, yeah, there's loads of good music, loads of styles. I just needed a blast of that for a while. An Instruo black and gold style system. Gregonator asked, "Will we ever see an Instruo system?"
Yep.
Yeah. You can build your own. I shared a picture with my Patreon supporters in my Discord channel of a 9U set of Instruo modules, with one of them little blacked out in the corner, which we'll maybe touch on as a follow-up question in a second. Yeah, it looks great. Works really nice. And things like Tine and switches and Vinkers really kind of bring all those kind of... people say sexier. That's always an odd kind of word to me, but I do parrot and repeat it a lot. But around the bigger, sexier stuff, the complex oscillators and the granular and all these other things, they really kind of flesh that system out really well. Tom in the chat said they love the Vinker. They've got 6 of them. They've noticed the new ones that they've bought have a different board layout, 2.0. Are there any difference in modular performance?
Nothing at all. It's entirely just optimization for assembly, which I've steadily been doing with a few different modules. So the TSL relaunch, essentially, like it's got a new construction on it, and I took that time to add a few extra things that I thought would just bump it up a notch. So yeah, the Vinca got that hardware revision, absolutely no change in functionality to it. The next one will be the Athru, actually, the wave folder. Same sort of like perpendicular board mounting design I'll be doing, but again, it's entirely just to allow us to build them faster.
Yeah, I like seeing how they're kind of like jigsawing at the back. It's cool. Bob Fett Music Lab, they've seen a quad sawtooth oscillator on a playing card. Not these ones, these are my Oct ones that I got recently. Is that something that's coming? Say that they love your modules.
Yep.
Yeah, it's on a playing card. There's no... yeah, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, there's any... The things on playing cards are things that will exist, right? You're not just throwing rumor out there.
So far, it's going that way. Yep.
Yeah.
Like a sort of, I kind of did that because we wanted to sort of make the deck as fleshed out as possible, so we had a good range of cards to go out. But it means that like one card per deck, there are like 3 modules, I think, which are sort of on the horizon. Some of them I don't really have a time frame for, but it's kind of a good way to keep me on point, keep me focused. I was like, okay, so I did kind of show that off already, so I need to keep that somewhere up the queue.
It's a really nice way, I thought, when they that kind of muff wiggler thread. Hey, I've just seen this thing called Tine, and I can see this, and I can't quite see it, and bits of pictures shared of cards that people had. It's a really nice balance between not showing anything until it's ready, and here it is, you can buy it, here's a demo video, here's all that kind of thing, doing the normal release. But I think that's a really nice way of just more subtly throwing a few things out there, especially at the moment where we haven't had, in COVID lockdown, we haven't had events where you may show a smaller group of people and someone might snap a picture that ends up on Instagram or something.
Yeah, exactly. I think that was one of the ideas, was to take out certain cards from the deck to stop them going into trading card circulation. But I think with everything that was going on, we're like, it's quite a nice way to sort of just feed it out subtly. And if it does gain traction, then it's early feedback for us to know what's worth focusing on more.
Yeah, it's really cool. Red Means Recording. Hey, Jeremy in the chat. Jeremy,
hey.
I asked Jeremy, I commented back to him earlier that did he see the roaming phone walk down? He will love Winston, the studio dog. But Jeremy says intro modules seem pretty unique and smart in their approach to workflow. We've mentioned listening to customers about features. How do you balance doing things the Instruo way versus what customers ask for?
I kind of ignore a lot as much as I can. Like I'll occasionally get emails from someone like saying I've got some ideas for a module, and it's a tricky one. Like I'll at this stage I kind of try and actively keep a conversation going, but basically say don't share too much, because if there's a chance that there's something, the number of modules that I've got in development, like on the whiteboard, there's a chance there might be something that sort of, there's overlaps in the Venn diagram. And it's just to avoid that awkwardness of like, oh, when did that idea come about? Yeah, it's a tricky one. Like there are a lot of ideas out there that I'll get a lot of emails with suggestions, and some some of them are very good ideas. But a lot of the time, I find they're ideas for modules that it's a combination of lots of modules put together. So the benefit of it being a single module would be space conservation. Like you'd be able to like consolidate it down, but there are ways to do it with existing modules as it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough without kind of spilling the beans of what you're working on, letting someone down if you say you will do it. Ideas form other ideas.
Exactly. Yeah, I don't want to get hopes up when I might have like the best intention. Like it's an idea will like come in, I'll get excited and like do a certain amount of work, but then it just gets pushed back, as the other things that are currently on the workbench.
Yeah. I find people
focused on again.
Yeah, I find people kind of throwing ideas at me, having released Mutes and Octave yourself and Random Step as well, and a lot of them seem very, very kind of personal use case. They may be making amazing music and performing, and it's like they really, as you say, they want to condense 3 things down that would really help their workflow and save them 10 HP or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you think about it in a wider context, it's kind of like, it's not going to suit everybody, or maybe it's just too specialized, or I don't know. But a lot of it, I can imagine 10 times what people would say to me, kind of ideas that get thrown and how usable or not some of them are.
Yeah, too many module ideas, not enough hours in the day.
Well, yeah, of your own. Never mind anyone else's. Nick Jones asked, any other stereo modules in the work other than Arbor? Arbor and Luber are out now. I'll put links to those in the chat for anyone that's maybe missed them. Yeah, any other stereo modules?
It's kind of a trend at the moment. There's so many modules out there that are stereo focused, like the QPass. There are a few things. I do have some things in mind. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, working in stereo is something you're interested in.
Yeah,
is the kind of main point to that one. User-friendly sound. Speaking of t-shirts, how do we get an Instruo t-shirt? Do they exist?
They do, but they're all in my wardrobe because
that's all you wear.
That's all I wear. Yeah, it's a combination of my t-shirts and other modular company t-shirts that I've traded for at trade shows. So, I'm not sure how to do swag like that and t-shirts. I guess there's like it's a thought that I've had. Like there are a few like companies out there that it's sort of like self-funded through like official designs, and then you order through the source. So there's a few things we've thought about, but it's it's something that just gets bumped down on the priority list, unfortunately. But,
Stu Day asked, any plans to get into the One U game?
Yes, but it's sort of further down on the whiteboard than anything else at the moment. But I would like to. Like there's a few conversations to be had there with various parties that I've collaborated with in the past. So
yeah,
I think there could be space for that.
Mm-hmm. Personal question, but not a rude one in any way. Benjamin is always curious, what's your ethnic background?
I was born in Scotland. My mum's Scottish. My dad's Chinese Malaysian. And when I had dreadlocks like halfway down my back, I think I looked even more ethnically confusing.
There you go, Benjamin in the chat. Question answered. Ben Karaiti, I think that is. Would you make a dedicated drum voice module or experimental sound source similar to Jolin Labs Tabor, for example? I don't know if you've seen that module.
I'm not sure if I have seen that one. I have had plans for. I've actually got like full prototype circuits built for, when I was studying like the T network filter design, like kick circuits and drum voices.
Yeah, the core of a kind of the core of an 808 kick, similar to a pinged filter, right, in a kind of circuit.
Yeah. So I do have various prototypes that I built at an early stage, but again, it's finding the priority where they sit, because at the moment, like there are a lot of percussion voices that I use patched with with a collection of Instruo modules, like the 1047, the IO47, like works really nicely as a versatile percussive voice.
Just quickly, in the chat, someone said there's a huge need for send and return in Euro. Someone's saying like Leon now exists. So there you go for send and return. Then a nice question, a nice follow-up to the t-shirts. Marked, who does some great blind panels or blank panels through Signal Sounds, which I'll pull up shortly. He says for t-shirts you should do a limited edition t-shirt collab with One of 100 based in Glasgow. That would be cool.
That sounds like a plan. Yeah,
they did a great Future Sound Systems collab. It's kind of the filter slope response of the Spectral Devastator. Cool. They did a nice collab. Yeah, really nice quality t-shirt as well from One of 100. So that would be cool. If anybody knows them, if you don't, Jason, maybe ping them. Tell them that would be a great idea.
Sorry, that was Winston knocking something over. What are you doing?
Winston wants some attention. All good. Will we see a V2 Harmony with more inputs? To me, that seems an oddish question. Is the modules about taking an input and forming a chord voice from it, or the relevant musical information? But quantizers, maybe multi-channel quantizers, multi-channel harmony. Does that have any interest? Anything on the kind of backbone?
There's it wouldn't. What I've got roughly in mind, it wouldn't so much be a successor to the harmony, but there's things that I've got in mind, kind of branching off from the ether, which will open up a lot of capabilities, because having something that's a versatile like CV input output processor, quantizers can be built to do anything really, and it's all a matter of interface and code. But with the ether, where it's iOS controlled, like there's lots of ways that things can be made very accessible. So that's a loose plan for the future, but I don't currently have any plans for a new harmony beyond what it's currently doing.
The album Made of the Luba is called
That's it, you found it.
Halation. I found it on Amazon Music. It's on all streaming platforms. I'm not going to try and butcher that name. I struggle with English as is. Never mind anything that's non-Bradfordian, which is a town in England. Yeah, there we go. There's a link to it on Amazon. If you go find that on any streaming platforms, and ask me if you're curious. If you're watching back, I can go after this stream, go pull up Spotify links or anything else for people. I'm certainly going to go check that out. We only have a few more questions, but we've time for a few more if people want them to come. Not quite final call, but if people want to ask any more questions, do keep firing away. Is there a collab with Planet Wave in the works? That's from Kill Paris. I don't know who Planet Wave is. And Planet Wave's cables was the first thing that came to mind. I was like, they're not going to be working with...
That's the Planet Waves I know of, like guitar leads and stuff.
Yeah. No, I don't. Maybe if still in the chat, let us know. Another one from Studio. Were you and Vlad Kramer sharing a joint when you came up with the Scion? That's Vlad Kramer from Soma Labs. That'd be an interesting meeting of minds. For you and Vlad to get some time together, that would be pretty cool. I think that's it for all the questions. As I say, that's not a kind of let's round off and plant wave. Kill Paris says. Does that ring any bells?
Plant wave? No. You're doing a quick Google foo.
Well, that answers the question that there's no collab going on. Because Plant Wave is the new version of MIDI Sprout.
Oh, I see. Yeah. I've loosely been keeping up with what Data Garden are doing. They're the designers of the MIDI Sprout, which is the open source MIDI interface with the plant sensors. So that's what the Scion is based on. Like it's using their foundation engine, and I added additional circuitry for the DAC outputs and the CV inputs. But yeah, like they're doing really cool stuff.
Yeah. An off-topic question: what beer are you guys drinking? I saw that Blue Moon have a new mango wheat, and I thought I'd give that a go. Slowly sipping a beer over 2 hours. It's very nice though. What have you got to drink with the?
I can't remember what the keg is.
Guest keg, the Instruo.
Last keg we got was a Brooklyn Lager. This is more of a German wheat beer.
Yeah, similar.
I can find out.
CMOS Party, any inspiration between Oct and the CGS Super Psycho modulation source? I don't know the CGS Super Psycho source. I'll find it. The influence for Oct came from patching 8 free-running LFOs, which has been something I've tried to root in very open software synthesis on a laptop or computer for a long time, and then something that I've been doing a lot of in modular, literally 8 LFOs, and then things like the Batumi came along. Great, I can have 4 LFOs, they can free run, or I can kind of master sync them all. Obviously Batumi does a lot more than an Oct will do. We've got different ways of working and things. Then things like Pam's new workout and Octo controllers, and you can free run an Octo controller from abstract data, which is great. I think the Octo controllers are really unsung. I'm sure it's sold very well, so it's a very popular module, but it's still a kind of unsung hero of 8 bits of modulation that does a hell of a lot. And I didn't want to tie up the Octo controller just being 8 free-running LFOs, even though it would do so very well, and it would give me that idea of master control of a kind of 8 offset varying free-running things. I got a second Octo controller and then decided that's not enough. I like all this kind of tempo synced. We're leading on to random step with this little story, and I liked all this tempo synced divided down random modulation, having multiple randoms on, say, 16th notes, some on 8s, quarters, bars, 4 bars, and that would tie a whole Octo controller up. And it was just too much patching. It was a case of we don't need all this fuss, I don't need syncing, it doesn't need this control. I get that everyone's gut reaction is, why can't I sync it? Why is it just a triangle wave? Why is it so simple? But the point is just to have 8 of them fanning across a system and make the system come alive and let it all just breathe. And just forget about it. I realised that through that patching I didn't need tempo sync. It didn't need to be digital. And that with things like, say, PWM on an old mono synth, I never tried to sync the LFO. Just kind of move the slider till it felt good for the patch and forget about it. Just let the synth just move. But then I got really frustrated when,
especially in bigger systems and bigger patches, there's so many variables, so many parameters that can be modulated. So, the Oct's extremely useful in that context. You can just add a little bit of movement to things that you wouldn't necessarily always dedicate your few LFOs that you might have in a system. So it's
yeah. And you can pack, it packs a hell of a punch in 4 HP. So yeah, that works really well. I could go on about Oct and kind of various bits of stuff along the way and random step and others, but a related question and a kind of interesting one that we might have similar, or well, they won't be opposing because we work in similar ways, but User Friendly asks, for both Ben and Jason, why do module ideas have to be kept quiet? They're assuming it's just a common marketing thing, and they were just curious to ask. I mean,
partly feature creep, which is hard enough to overcome when it's just working within, either just myself or working with a close collaboration within in-house. As soon as the floor's opened, everyone's got ideas for stuff to add in, and it's partly, not wanting to disappoint people. If like the floor's opened and lots of people request something, it doesn't end up in the final build. It's we don't have that disappointment level. There's also you know, it, there could be a risk of someone calling out and saying, "Hey, that was my idea." And it's like, there's, which might well have been the case, but it's, if it's designed in-house in more of a bubble, then it's something that I've got a bit more control over, like the curation of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's it's a few things. In a kind of corporate business sense, it's been able to capitalize on interest. I don't want to share an idea that feels like old boring news a year later because it's taken a long time to develop. For me, even more so because I can't develop anything. I didn't do any of the circuit on Aux. That was Jason entirely. I can give musical ideas, I can sketch a panel, I can give text of what I want it to be, I can video patches, but I can't actually design a circuit to do so. So for me, that's an even bigger restriction. And if I share an idea that doesn't come to life, or it changes, or as you say, feature creep, it just seems better. I've always liked it when people, as a kind of consumer and user myself of modular and someone that still buys modules, I like that, hey, here's this thing, and if I want it, I can go and get it. I've seen, kind of time and time again, without naming names, things being announced, and then it's maybe at a big event, NAMM, Super Booth, a year later. Yeah, it's coming soon, and then it's a year later again. And understanding how it works, I kind of feel for people that are, getting pestered for that. Hey, we saw this 2 years ago, where is it? And it just hasn't met their vision yet, or the team's vision yet. And I think it just makes more sense to just not let interest fizzle, not let it fade away.
It's avoiding hard deadlines like that as well. Like,
yeah.
If I do announce something and it's still earlier stages, so many things can go wrong. Like there could be a component that's just back ordered, so it's like, okay, that's going to add another 4 months to the lead time of a component that then holds up the actual assembly. There's so many unknowns. So what we've been trying to do more and more, like with the Tine and the Leon, is having the first batch at distribution at Signal Sounds ready to go out to retailers before, a good week or two before we actually make the full announcement. Because that way, when it minimizes that gap of like someone seeing the new announcements, like, oh, that's actually what I need in my system. If it's a case of it's an announcement, it will be out next summer.
Yeah,
it's it can be frustrating. So trying to get the jump on that and taking our time, because at the moment there's enough of a range of products that we've got out that's just like constant maintenance. So we're constantly building those. So it means that we'll just add the new stuff into the build queue and just build up stock and then be fully prepared for a full launch.
Yeah. And that makes it nice and fair for everyone around the world that, you're in the UK. It's not a case that the UK all have stock a week early because they've not got over to the States yet, or whatever method they used to be sent around. I like that just it is globally kind of announced, available, it's there, it's kind of fair for everyone. Shops that kind of up on other stores that maybe have them and others don't. Kind of nice open playing field. But yeah, it's a really good point about components. You could actually have the finished final ready one. Maybe you've got 10 of them that were a short test batch and they're all perfect. And you say soon, and then a component holds it up for 6 months. I remember pots not being available for a while. Going back a few years now, and people I can't.
There have been a few things at various times. Actually, the Looper almost had a major hold up before it launched. Because the SODIMM connectors, like the big processor clip that the Raspberry Pi board goes into, they had a lead time of 8 to 10 weeks or something. So that was going to add another 8 to 10 weeks to the production schedule. So fortunately, I was able to find some in stock. It might have been DigiKey or something like that. So I ended up having to pay more for the component, but it was just
avoided the whole
necessary evil. So ordering that and then having to send stock that will originally have come from China back to China to then be put onto a board to then be sent to the UK. So it's not so good for the carbon footprint. But
back to kind of ethically mindful earlier. SRCDK says, when is Octa expected to be back in stock? They go out, a good large amount go out every month, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, they hit distribution every month. They go out to stores that have ordered every month. Yeah, it's not necessarily out of stock. It may have been for a while in a place. They're still selling incredibly well, and for those and the interest in it with Oct is couldn't be more grateful. It's amazing to see people getting the idea and it being a really kind of engaging musical thing for people to be patching. It's great. But yeah, Oct certainly isn't out of stock. It's not out of production at all. They're
built week by week, and it's maybe at the moment it's weekly pickups,
right,
going to distribution.
Yeah, okay. So last kind of few questions, maybe a good time to final call questions. We've been going for a couple of hours, so we'll do a bit of a last call and I'll keep blasting through as we get towards finishing. August in the chat, can the firmware be updated for Luba to support true tape style behaviour, recording C3 at half speed and then hearing C3 only when the playback speed is set to half speed? Seems the wrong way around to me. If it was recorded half speed.
Yeah, well, I think I know where they're coming from. Okay. So it's something that is it's a bit of a paradox, a bit of a conundrum, like trying to get that behavior. Like basically to do that, you need to have a fully variable sample rate.
Okay.
Which I mean, it's not impossible, but it would have it's it would have added a year of development to the looper to actually do that for something that is, truer to how tape behaves, but not necessarily worth it for the amount of time it would have added to it. So the way that we've figured out to implement it is you can get that sort of effect by bouncing between decks. So anything where you would be repitching and redubbing, so like recording something lower, pitching it up, that can all be done if you're doing that and treating it as a sort of bounce back between the two decks. I think actually in the looper video, I think there's an example where I show that, where I capture something in, bounce it across, pitch it up, and then pitch it back down.
Yeah, the two decks makes perfect sense. There was a Dutch mixer announced a year ago. I was needing it then. Now I'll probably not buy it because I've got a different solution. And I did have lots of feature requests back then. Yeah, kind of plays into what we were saying about not announcing modules. Nick Jones, what was the inspiration for the module faceplates? They look ancient yet futuristic and alien at the same time.
I think it was like a sort of steampunk type look. I've got the original Troika. There, in case anyone's not seen the original video, I shall jump over to
the brass steam plate
camera
vibe.
Yeah. So I've kind of got a joke when I've like showing this to people. Is like, I found that toggle switch and I designed the module around the toggle switch just because they're huge and over the top, so that they have to be wired directly to it. So this is the original, where it is a solid brass faceplate. Big chunky knobs, and the LEDs are ultraviolet, so it's kind of got this ominous purple glow. So it's kind of that sort of steampunk aesthetic. And I've just sort of evolved and adapted over time, like just finding ways to keep the sort of brass elements. So going with the custom brass nuts and the black and gold faceplate. So yeah, it's just something. It wasn't so much a master plan. It's something that's just kind of evolved over time.
Yeah. Into the last couple of questions. User-friendly sounds say they want an Oct but for envelopes. I did comment back the same thing. Is that preset shapes but different times? Is that how you triggering them all? Because that would tie the jacks up. You couldn't really have 1 in to 8 out. I don't quite see what that would be. But interesting, certainly interesting to have some kind of enveloped behavior based on, again, this idea of letting certain amounts of control go and having some free running things. A great module for that, although it's a stochastic function generator, it can be an envelope or an LFO, is, I believe it's called the stochastic function generator from ADAC Modular. ADAC system, sorry. I pulled that up just as a quick image for people, if I can find it. There we go, pictures. So just a super quick primer on that. I won't get into talking about everyone else's modules, but it's 4 function generators with rise and fall time, so top left and top right white controls, those white Davies knobs, and you set a minimum and a maximum potential rise time and a minimum and a maximum potential fall time, and when they're looping, their rise and fall times will fall between those minimum and maximums. So if they're set the same, it'll be repeatable. If you set minimum all the way left and maximum all the way right, each cycle will potentially be any value between long and short, or minimum and maximum. So it's a great way of having this kind of like interlinked behavior falling within these preset minimum maximums, and either triggering those or having them loop is a really interesting way of kind of injecting random into function generators. That might be exactly the thing you're looking for, user friendly.
Yeah, that's a really nice module. I've got that's an email that's dropped down in my inbox that I need to get back to, is with the ADAC guys.
Yeah, Andre's on
organizing
some really cool stuff.
A swap.
Yeah, do so. Andre's on some really cool stuff. Yeah, maybe half the outputs that would allow for triggering or getting of the inputs, one knob to increase or decrease envelope times. Could be interesting. It's not something I've thought about, and I've certainly lots of other ideas in the queue. I'll play around. I'll patch around. You never know. Thanks for answering the questions. Thanks for asking them. An 8 HP version of Oct that can switch between envelope and LFO, allow the nano modules quart. Yeah, we're getting a little, for me, a bit feature creepy into other modules, and I think you maybe feel the same, Jason, saying earlier that modules are often developed out of a need, as opposed to, that being a kind of prior or most important thing, maybe, that just a need for something. Yeah, same for me. If I feel like something else does it, like Quart by Nano Modules, which is a nice envelope or looping envelope, that I just kind of, my ideas kind of go out the window. It's like, well, I'll just use that. There's such a great community of modular makers and users that, there's no kind of treading on toes for me. If something existed, I'd just be like, yeah, cool, I'll use that. But with those fixed organic timings, it's interesting. An Oct kind of envelope-y idea. It's something to kind of mill on. Is the prototyping of PCBs and panels from Instruo done in-house? That's from Effects Music.
You mean PCB fabrication, or?
It just says, is the prototyping of PCBs and panels? You're getting the actual circuit boards and panels elsewhere, right? That's not in-house.
Yeah, there's various assembly houses that do the actual PCB fabrication. There's a few that I use. Like, all the design work happens here, and then they're sourced from various places depending on the quantity that I need for a production run versus a small prototype batch.
Yeah. Signal sounds, sliding nuts or threaded rails. That's a pill of an argument I don't want to die on. I've got
both?
Yeah, funnily, I have a 104 HP case from someone up in Glasgow, actually. GMSN. Glasgow Make Some Noise. Rob's done a couple of things since, but that doesn't exist anymore. And it's an 84 HP threaded strip with sliding in the sides. And it's strangely useful to have the bulk move if I want, but then they're dotted around. So yeah, maybe both. Final question. There was a Para, P-A-R-A, module card in my Leon box. I'd like to know more. What can you tell us?
It's a really rare card. There's only one per deck.
Ooh, Mason. Ooh. There you go. I've not seen that one. Genuinely, I don't know what Para is. Not by name, anyway. Super rare. Yeah.
I think we've spoken about that one at some point, but it's something that is in the pipeline. Actually, when lockdown first came in, I was self-isolating for a couple of weeks at one point and just knuckled down on some code for the prototype. So it's it's made a good bit of progress. There's a hardware revision. I'm gonna bump up the to a bigger processor for it, just to give a bit higher bandwidth of the capabilities. But it's something that's in the works.
Great. Well, let's well, one final question. There is a slight delay, so apologies if you get a final question after this one, I'm going to call it this one. But Milo says, what was your inspiration for the Harmonig?
Basically how I work in music theory. So I studied. I was a guitar major at Berkeley, so it was like all very guitar focused. How I was studying, harmony, ear training, and modal theory, chord theory. So it's kind of just the way that I think and approach things when I'm composing or when I'm analyzing, transcribing. So I just tried to incorporate how I would like to be able to just have every mode on hand. So it's like there's an interesting question that comes up fairly frequently from harmony users, and it's sort of, I can kind of guess whether they come from more of a classical training background or like a jazz harmony background. So the harmony is essentially fixed do concept. Like if you're thinking in solfege, singing style, where do is always going to be C, and it depends whether you're in Ionian mode or Aeolian mode or Phrygian. It just changes the formula. So Ionian being tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone, and then you basically treat the keyboard as an interval map. So you're not necessarily playing C on C. But it means there's two ways to use it. You can use, in certain contexts, you can use fixed do, where C is always going to be C. And then if you're wanting to play something in a different mode, you basically use the relative mode to that. But it'll only work with the Ionian notes in that context. So there's a few quirks, but I kind of designed it to be, you pick your modal center, you select what root notes you want in the chord progression, and then once you've got the oscillators tuned to unison, you can then retune the entire thing. And I made all the ins and outs for CV input, and then the CV outputs, they're plus and minus 10 volts. So you've got 20 octaves of range, which is daft, but it means that you've got the headroom to move the entire thing in parallel. So say you've got like bass voices, register for your oscillators, you can move the whole thing up without having to like retune each oscillator individually.
Yeah, I think that way of working, the fixed do, where the C and it being an interval map as opposed to set notes, I find it a much more kind of engaging way to work personally, and maybe that means you can guess my background more than one rather than the other. But I spoke about that at Velocity in Seattle last year with the kind of talk about the anatomy of a live system that I'd put together, and there's lots of playing and punching notes into a quantizer and trying to explain the idea of thinking in intervals. If I'm not playing with anyone else, I really don't care where the oscillator is tuned. I don't have perfect pitch, so it doesn't frustrate me that I can say C or C and know it's really a B flat or a slightly flat A. Just doesn't matter. Tune it to where it feels right. As kind of my approach. When I'm on my own, of course there's someone else involved, you've got to have a tuning reference, whatever that is. Whether that's just not in actual reference, it's two modular players and you both just coarse and fine tune into each other, or it's an actual instrument. Actual instrument's the wrong way to put it. An acoustic instrument maybe, or a guitar, where it's like they are tuned to a standard tuning you have to match. But yeah, thinking in intervals I find a much more interesting way of composing. I've always kind of worked that way anyway, and finding that I've done that on software oscillators, just kind of tuning them to where they're right, and then you're looking at the MIDI and you maybe put a sampler instrument in, you realise you're really off. And you've got to kind of bring everything back and scale MIDI up and down and so on and so on. Gerald Ford, I did say final question, but as he has the Scion tattoo, we can have the actual closing question. Any tattoo-worthy modular designs coming up? He's another arm that doesn't have an Instruo tattoo on.
Take your pick.
Yeah. Do that down the back, Gerald. Thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to Stu J. They're mentioning that for those that aren't on DivKids Patreon and Discord, you're truly missing out on a great supportive community. Big thanks to those that do support me on Patreon. That enables me really to kind of keep doing what I'm doing. Spurs on a lot of just great community. I'm just proud to be part of that community, never mind kind of head it and foster it. It's a really great group of people that when I check in a couple of times a day, these great conversations have been had. And I'm just kind of dipping into all this kind of good stuff that's happening. It's great. Yeah, there's another question. We'll take it. I did say final. When are you shipping modules? They've been waiting a long time for Arbor. That's Ed Draper in the chat.
Same story. The production's ongoing.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
There's high demand, so basically we're supplying as many as can be made to distribution, and then they go out worldwide from there. So yeah, we've had to change operations a bit with the new world. I'm not doing any direct sales these days, so everything just goes to distribution and it's all going out to retail. But it's that's allowed me to be hands off on the shipping side of things completely. So we're just constantly working all day, every day.
Yeah, I figured that just maybe answered a support email up front. Things just keep going out. The best thing's just to tell stores when you want things. That really helps everybody, for stores to know that people are interested in that territory or region of what's wanted and who wants what. And fortunately and unfortunately, things are going well. Things are in demand. That means kind of having to hold out for stuff is the unfortunate bit. But yeah, things are going out regularly, and same for Oct. Yeah, thank you for everyone for this stream. One thing I'd like to just kind of ask: any closing remarks? It's typical to ask what's next, but we've also then spoke about why you don't say what's coming until it's ready. Anything you'd like to close on or tease, or is there anything we've mentioned through tonight that might be the next thing, even if you don't say what that is? Have we discussed the next thing this evening?
I guess the next thing is very much going to tie into the harmony, not as a expander, but something that is very well suited for it. So yeah, this was hinted at earlier in a trading card.
There we go. Jason joined the Discord. Yeah, if Jason has time to come and chat to us in Discord, I can certainly send him an invite into our little group as well. But yeah, thank you, Jason, for the studio tour. Nice to see Winston, Keg, Arcade Machine, Studio. I really like the idea that the team go and play music together, be it reggae or blues. As you said, you landed on the other day.
Yeah.
Signal Sounds know what it is. You'd hope so. You would hope, being the distributor. If that wasn't clear to people, Signal Sounds, as Jason said earlier, do distribute for Instruo and other brands, and do a great job of it too. Someone asked earlier about getting things sent to the US. Signal Sounds are sending stuff to the US all the time, not just Instruo, without issue and quickly. There's been some great reports in my Discord group about, hey, I ordered this and it got here in 3 days from the UK or Europe to the US. I think things are getting across to the US quite quickly at the moment. Great. I forget who it was that got the Para card, but they said it's Destiny, they're going to buy one because they got the rare card in the Leon box. Any questions, leave them in the comments. I'd certainly like any questions, patch ideas, involvement from you as a community that's watching that you want in the Tine Switch video. If you get a comment on this video in the next couple of days, I can try and include it in the video demo with credit if you wish. Share some nice patch ideas from the community. And we'll see you next time. We'll certainly do some more streams around other new modules and things in the future too. Great. I'll leave you with a little cut of the Leon video. For anyone that's missed it, I'll put the link in. I suggest you go watch that. Leon the Lion. Watch out for Leon the film. Watch out for the Div Lion. They skim by quite quick. Here's 40 or 50 seconds of patches with the Leon patch matrix. Great. Cheers, Jason. I'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Bye. Hello and welcome to this video on Leon from Instruo. Let's check out what's to come.